Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me to Landrum, South Carolina. I was in Black Mountain yesterday at a music conference. I live in New Jersey, and this is my first time since the pandemic getting back out on the road. I pretty much lived on the road for 15 years, and when the pandemic happened, it was like, okay, stay home. You know, I didn't know what to do. My guitar had almost never come out of my guitar case in my house for 15 years. It always came out at the venue, and the only time I ever practiced was backstage. And I was more of a performer than a musician. And in the last couple of years, I've become more of a musician than a performer. So today I'm transitioning back into the performing thing, and it's wonderful to be here amongst you folks here, and thank you for inviting me. So I put together a talk. It took me 40 years and 2 hours to put this together. Because what it is a collection of experiences, and it includes today's experience because, you know, it is amazing that Spirit has a certain way of, I've already heard 2 if not 3 stories this morning right here that will find their way into my presentation. The story of the power of folk music and how it can be used as a tool for social and spiritual growth. It's a pretty amazing thing. And so I have some notes here to look at. I would like to kind of discuss what makes folk music so powerful. Why do I think it's powerful? I might do this extemporaneous. Yeah. You know, so I grew up in the Christian tradition, and somewhere in one of the books it says, "In the beginning was the Word." And I've come to believe, and I may very well be wrong, but I've come to believe that that word was actually a song. You know, some traditions sing that song as Om. Some traditions sing the word as Hugh. I sing the word Hugh. For me, it spiritualizes the consciousness. But human beings have, since the beginning, been inspired by music, have been strengthening their communities by singing together. I'm going to start off with a little story. The first thing I want to say is a story a woman told me once about 2 birds. One was named Faith, and one was named Hope. And it was quite early in the morning when the woman heard these birds singing. They were singing so beautifully. She went outside and started talking with the birds. And she asked the one bird, "What is your name?" And the bird said, "My name is Faith." "Oh, that's a beautiful name. How did you get that name?" And the bird said, "Well, you know, faith," is what the bird said. We may all have our own interpretations, but, you know, faith is the understanding and acceptance and belief that every experience that we have contains within it a seed for spiritual growth or social change. You know, and so in a certain sense, we need to carry that faith with us and be aware. I've had so many experiences. I've learned this. I get hired to do a concert. Thank you, God. The concert gets canceled. Thank you, God. You know, just recently, I was going to do my first show of the year on April 1st, and in preparation for I didn't know what to play. I hadn't played a concert in a long, long time. I didn't know what to play, and a couple of things happened where people said, "Oh, so-and-so," and I came up with 3 songs that I wanted to play, and then the concert got canceled. But I didn't realize that those are the 3 songs that I'm going to put into this presentation, which I did first on April 5th. So I had the faith that every event that happens is a breadcrumb that's leading me along the path to the best destination I can go to. The other bird was named Hope. And the woman asked the bird Hope, said, "How'd you get that name?" And the bird Hope said that hope is when we fix our attention on our vision. When we have a clear enough vision of what it is that we want to see in this world and in ourselves. And it's not so clear that we define every point, every detail of it. We have to leave room for Spirit to fill it in the best way that's beyond our own comprehension. But it has to be clear enough to give us direction. And we find that vision, then we have to maintain that vision. And we have to work toward it. And we have to polish it with gratitude. And so the woman said, this is amazing. You're singing such beautiful songs. You know, you woke me up in the middle of the night. And they said, it's not the middle of the night. It's very, very early in the morning. And the woman said, it's so dark around here. And they said, have you heard the news lately? What's going on? Oh my goodness. And the bird said, yes, but the dawn's coming soon. See? And they said, you know, you humans can see a certain spectrum of light. You can't see the light right now over the horizon. You may not be able to see it, the birds can see it. And so they start singing, you know? But that light is there. That light is there, and it's coming around the horizon. And when we have the faith, and we have the hope, and we have the vision, and we know that all of these experiences, harrowing experiences, wonderful experiences, contain within them the gems with which we build our world and ourselves. It's pretty fantastic. So what does folk music have to do with that? Well, what if there's a fellow named Joe Hill who once said something to the effect of, you can write a pamphlet about the economy, and somebody might read it once and retain a small percentage of it and put the pamphlet down and it ends up in the garbage. But a song, if properly constructed and distilled down to its essential, will be sung over and over and over, and people will remember this. So here's a song that takes this idea of it being dark before the dawn, takes the idea that no matter how much we feel overwhelmed when some of us do on some occasions about the crazy stuff that we hear through the media, that is really happening. But there's still this light there. And it's not just over the horizon, it's right in here too. See? So this is a song that, guess who wrote? Pete Seeger. And it takes a very, very simple concept. Don't you know it's darkest before the dawn? Right? We've heard that. Well, let's put it into a song that everybody can sing and continue to share this message. It's the darkest before the dawn. And we can sing along to it. Don't you know it's darkest before the dawn? It's this thought keeps me moving on. If we could heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early morning. If we could heed, if we could heed these early warnings, these early warnings, the time is now, the time is now, quite early morning, quite early morning. Some say that humankind won't long endure, but what makes them feel so doggone sure? I know that you who hear my singing can make those freedom bells go ringing. I know that you who hear my singing, can make those freedom bells go ringing. Make those freedom bells go ringing. And so we keep on while we live, until we have no more to give. And when these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger. When these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger, young ones stronger. Before the dawn, it's this thought keeps me moving on through all this world of joys and sorrows, We still can have we still can have. Singing tomorrow, singing tomorrow, all this world, through all this world, of joy and sorrow, joy and sorrow. We still can have, we still can have. Singing tomorrow, singing tomorrow, through all this world of joy and sorrow. We still can have singing tomorrow. I had the incredible fortune of working with Pete Seeger. I sang alongside him more than 50 times at concerts and festivals. I learned a lot of his songs. I learned the stories behind his songs. But even more so, I learned who he was and what he was about. And he was not about himself. He was about what we can do as a group of people. He was about participation. He built himself, he lived on the Hudson River, 60 miles north of New York City in Beacon, New York. And he built himself a little sailboat. And would go out on the Hudson River. I'm saying this is probably in the late 50s and getting into the early 60s. He had discovered a book called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. And before that, he was always quite sure that the meek shall inherit the earth. But when he read the book Silent Spring, he started wondering, what kind of earth are the meek going to inherit? Will it be a trash can, or will it be something better than that? And he would sail up and down the river, and he would see a bubblegum wrapper and pick it up and put it in his boat. And he'd see an empty soda bottle and pick it up and put it in his boat. An old tire, pick it up and put it in his boat. And he started one little step at a time, cleaning the river. and he had this vision that maybe one day we can get not 10, not 100, but thousands of people together and clean this river up. The Hudson River was the dirtiest major river in North America at that time. Today it's one of the cleanest. And Pete decided that the way he was going to do this was, he was going to get a group of people together. So he called a meeting. And 6 people came to the meeting. And he was very sad that only 6 people came to the meeting. He went home and told his wife, Toshi, only 6 people came to the meeting. And Toshi put her hands on her hips and said, meeting? Why did you call it a meeting? It should be a potluck supper and sing. And what has happened now is that every first Friday since then, and I'm not sure if this started in 1967 or 1969, every first Friday, the Beacon Sloop Club has met, and they start off every one of their meetings with a potluck supper. Yep. And then they have a 1-hour business meeting, and then they have 2, 3, 4 hours of people sitting around singing songs until Faith and Hope start singing themselves. And there's always a fire. There's always a fire. There's a fireplace within the Sloop Club, and there's a fire pit outside in the summer when they meet outside. And Pete decided that one of the ways to make this work was to work. Let's not just make the food, which is a wonderful thing, a lot of people buy it, but we build something. Let's build something. And he had this vision that the Hudson River could return to something that it was like in the past, where these wonderful boats called sloops would sail up and down. And there were only a few sloops left in the world at this time. And he mentioned it to somebody who came up with an idea, let's build our own sloop. So this became their project, to build a boat. The boat is called the Clearwater, the sloop Clearwater. It's 110 feet long. And it has a legacy that includes a fellow named Don McLean being one of the captains of the boat and writing a song on that boat called American Pie. You know, as well as Pete Seeger and all the other amazing non-musicians and artists and farmers and everybody else who was on that boat. And I learned from this story that there are 4 fundamental basic elements of connection that human beings have experienced since the beginning of our evolution. If we go back to apes, human beings are not that different than chimpanzees. If you take a chimpanzee's DNA and break it into 47 pieces, which is not a lot, because there's, I don't know how many genes there are. There's millions, thousands, a lot. 47 pieces and put it back together, you get a human being. And the humans somehow, and evolution experimented lots and lots of times with the development of humans. But one of the big things is that, see, God wanted us to have bigger brains. So we eventually developed bigger brains that used more energy. And so we couldn't grow the hair on our bodies to keep us warm. And we at this point, in order to have energy for that brain, our muscles are not as strong as a chimpanzee's. A chimpanzee who has the same size bicep as me is 6 times as strong. And so we can only survive by sticking together. And so for thousands of years, maybe even millions, at least hundreds of thousands, we've learned to survive by sticking together. And what are the 4 things that we did for thousands of years? We sat around fires, we shared food, we worked together, and we sang. And we sang that song of the universe, whether it be Hallelujah, or Amen, or Om, or Hugh, whichever one it was. We sang that, and we sang songs about our culture, and our history, and our values, and our struggles. And they brought us together. And so for a long, long time, the songs that people sang were songs of the people. They didn't learn them by putting on the radio 200 years ago or 2,000 years ago. We learned them because the only way you could hear music is people were singing them. And what did we sing? We sang the songs that our grandparents taught us. We sang the songs that we learned from the next community over. But maybe we adapted it. Maybe the 10 miles up the road, they're singing about the beautiful hills of North Carolina. And someone would come down here and sing the same song, but change it to the beautiful hills of South Carolina. A little thing like that. And this is called the folk process. And through the folk process, it distills the ideas that people have, the visions and the dreams, and it kind of distills them down to the ones that are the most common. Just imagine, somewhere in southern Georgia, in a Baptist church, they're singing a song called I Will Overcome, or I Will Be All Right, which eventually evolved into We Shall Overcome. And somebody in the back of the church stood up, and it was a Sunday, and they knew that next Saturday there was going to be a picnic. And they sang, it will be sunny next Saturday. It will be sunny next Saturday. And everybody sings it because, yeah, they want it to be sunny next Saturday. But then after the picnic, they don't sing it anymore. And the church next door didn't sing it either because it didn't resonate with them. But then somewhere else, people were meeting for a civil rights march, and they were scared. And they knew that singing together is one of the ways to overcome fear. So someone stood up in the back of the church and said, we are not afraid. And the next time they marched, they sang, we are not afraid. And the church next door started singing. And the people in the environmental movement started singing. And it became a part of the folk story of our community, of this little church, of this town, of the United States, of the world. To learn that whatever the value is that gets put in these songs, that's repeated over and over, in this song and that song. You learn the old songs, especially the old civil rights songs and social justice songs, and you see so many lines are the same, because that's how important those lines are. So folk music has a way of distilling really big concepts into little tiny nuggets. And I call that this taking intelligence and knowledge and distilling it into wisdom. And we know that it is darkest before the dawn. And it's that thought that keeps us moving on. See? Now, what happened to folk music? Well, folk music is today as powerful and poignant as it has ever been. But it's not as popular as it used to be because of 2 things really, and maybe the biggest one is technology. So you go back 200 years ago, even 150 years ago, you wanted music, you sang. Or someone would come to town and you would drop your rake, you would leave your mansion, you would go into town and listen to the troubadour and sing along, because this is how you heard music. Or someone would come to your house and play the piano, and friends and neighbors would travel for miles to come and hear live music. This is how you heard it. Then came the music box, and the player piano, and the phonograph, and the phonogram, and the radio. And we started being able to hear music without having to sing it ourselves. How wonderful. We could sit down around the hearth and eat with our family and learn songs from our grandparents, and then go up into our own rooms and put on the radio and hear something else. We started not having to learn these songs. And we started forgetting them. And So people like Pete Seeger and so many others, like Belly, for instance, became rememberers of the old songs and preservers of the old songs. And the song catchers would go around starting in maybe the 1920s particularly, when they started having the technology to record these songs, record them with mobile recording devices and go into the mountains of the Appalachians or into the Delta, to farmland, cowboy country, urban cities, the Adirondack Mountains, and learn these songs and document them. And Pete Seeger was, as a little boy, traveled around with his parents doing that, and he learned all these songs from all these different cultures. But he also learned about social justice. And he learned that cultures and groups of people change words. See, Pete told me this piece of wisdom. And he told me about music, but you can apply it to anything. Plumbing, carpentry, teaching, parenting, grandparenting, right? Learn the old songs or the old ways. Learn how they were done by different groups of people. But when you need to, change the words to keep them up to date. Write new verses about the world we live in today, and write new songs that everybody can sing. So in the 1940s and 50s and going into the 60s was this big folk revival, and people were learning the old songs and writing new ones, all the way up into the 70s, the 80s, still happening today, but they were still popular in the 60s and 70s. And a fellow named David Mallet wrote a song that is so appropriate for today, so appropriate to the little reading that Lyndon shared with us from Chief Seattle about the earth. It's a wonderful song called The Garden Song. And I'll tell you what the first verse is, and then I'll sing the revised first verse. The first verse is fantastic. Inch by inch, row by row, I'm going to make this garden grow. All you need is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the first time I sang that song with Pete, and I was looking up the words before we got together, and I learned those words. And then I got to the festival, and we rehearsed, and Pete was singing different words. And they were even better. And they instilled within this first verse, and other verses too, but they instilled within this first verse a deeper wisdom. And I thought to myself, there were these red flags that went up. I didn't see them. They were so subtle. All you need is a rake and a hoe? Really? You don't need to do the work. You don't need good seeds. Right? You don't need good weather. You don't need cooperation from Mother Nature, harmony with Mother Nature. Now, believe me, the original verse is fantastic. But this is even better. Inch by inch, row by row, going to make this garden grow. Going to mulch it deep and low. I'm going to make it fertile ground. Think about that in relationship to social justice or to our own personal spiritual growth. Yes, there are gems all around us. And yes, let's pick them up and polish them. But we can also, while polishing, we can make those gems. We can build the fertile ground. So here's the song, the garden song. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, how blessed these seeds I sow. Keep it warm in the earth below until the rain comes tumbling down. You'd like to sing that with me? Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low. Gonna make it fertile ground. Gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row. How blessed these seeds I sow. Keep it warm in the earth below until the rain comes tumbling down. Well, listen to this, getting back to Chief Seattle. Pulling weeds, picking stones, we're all made of dreams and bones. I got the feeling to grow my own, 'cause the time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain, we're all a part of nature's chain. Gonna tune my body and brain to the music of the land, inch by inch, row by row. Gonna make this garden grow.
Gonna make this garden
Gonna mulch it deep and low.
Gonna mulch it deep
Till
and
low. Gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row. Gonna make this garden grow.
Gonna make this garden grow.
Gonna mulch it deep and low.
Gonna mulch it deep
Till the
and
rain
low.
comes tumbling down. Plant those rows. Oh my goodness gracious, it's early in the morning. Plant those seeds, straight and long. Temper them with prayer and song. Mother Nature will keep them strong if we give her love and care. There's an old crow watching from a tree, got a hungry eye on me. In my garden, I'm as free as the feathered thief up there, inch by inch.
Inch by inch, row by row.
Gonna make this garden, gonna mulch it. Gonna mulch it deep and low. Gonna make it fertile ground, inch by inch.
Inch by inch,
Row by row, how blessed these seeds are. So keep it warm in the earth below until the rain comes tumbling down. Woo. My definition of folk music it's first of all, it's the music of the people, and I said how it comes from the folk process. And I think that for me, folk music, I think there's been wars fought over what the definition of folk music is, you know. But folk music is songs that reflect and promote our history, our culture, our landscape, our values, and our struggles. And I think when we learn to start with our common history, our common culture, our common values, and our common culture, everything common first, before we get to the struggles. There's a fellow named Woody Guthrie, wrote a song called This Land Is Your Land. Who knows this song? Do you realize today, and maybe you do, how many people realize today that that's a radical concept? That this land is your land and this land is my land. And we've even found ways to, try to harmonize that with the fact that this land was in some way stolen from the Native Americans, trying to reconcile that too. But this concept that we the people, that not one single individual, not a king or a queen or a prince or a pope or a politician knows all the answers. Nobody has a monopoly on truth. So how do we find it? Well, I think I know it, but that doesn't mean I know it that well. Lyndon thinks he knows it, but we can get together and start talking about it. We can get experts together. And so we find the commonality between it first. That's how we survive. And then we can apply it to the struggles. So This Land Is Your Land has 6 verses. And the first 3 are about the diamond desert and the ribbon of highway and the beautiful cities and wheat fields waving. And it's the 3rd verse that starts talking about the encroachment of private property. And the 4th verse, the next verse after that talks about the people struggling at the relief office. Those verses didn't make it into the school books. But they didn't need to because there were 6 verses and the first 3 made it in. So it started off with common ground. Pete Seeger wrote a song that some people, I don't know if Ellen will, I don't know if Ellen will concur with this. She would know better than me. But the story that I heard is that Pete Seeger's song, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, became almost an anthem of the anti-nuclear movement. And do you know how that was written? It was just written on an airplane in a little book about girls and flowers. Boys like to go whack. My nephew is the wonderfulest nephew you would imagine. He's definitely going ahead. He's a good kid. He loves everybody. And he likes to go whack. So he'll get his stick and he'll go in the backyard and he'll go whack. And he plays golf. and baseball. And if he was born when I was born, he'd be playing with guns too. You know, and going off, and then, you know, maybe going off the war and going whack with his gun. And that's what that song was about, just 3 verses. And then somebody heard it. I said, Pete sang it once, and someone recorded it. Pete lost his notebook and forgot about the song. And somebody recorded it. And the song was so short, and it went from the first verses so beautifully from where have all the flowers gone? The girls have picked them. Where have the girls gone? They've taken spouses. Where have the men gone? They've gone off to war. And it was so short, they sang it twice. And somebody said, well, what if I add a couple verses to it and make it go around over and over and over in a circle that just repeats itself from generation to generation? Maybe the soldiers have gone to graveyards, and the graveyards have gone to flowers. And it goes around in a circle. That was the folk process. And Pete did not set out to write an anti-nuclear or anti-war song. He set out to express appreciation and celebration of some of the characteristics of humankind. He was a big advocate of womanhood, girlness, you know, womanhood, that kind of thing. And so he said, you know, boys will play with guns. When will we ever learn? But I want to finish with one last song that I wrote to show you that, you know, the folk process continues to go forward. And the more that we learn about it, and I'll bet you this is very true with any way that we're communicating knowledge and information, but really trying to polish the gems of wisdom within it. That we learn the old ways, we learn what Tecumseh said, but you find, or Chief Seattle, or whomever it was, and we find ways to relate it to the lessons we need to learn today. And for me, what I see going on today is that I am, and I will mention this, you know, I've recorded 6 albums. And my 2 most recent albums are tributes to Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. Now, they still have 4 originals on each of those songs that I wrote, mostly under Pete's tutelage. And the reason why is because I've done that is to show that this process can continue to go forward. And the first of those 2 was called Keep the Flame Alive. And I started off with a t-shirt that had a banjo and a guitar and a fire in the middle. And after a couple of years, I realized that maybe that fire is the flame of liberty. Maybe this is the flame that we have to keep alive, right here. Maybe the flame we need to keep alive is really right here in our own hearts, right? We have to keep that flame alive. And the other one I put out, dedicated to the proposition. And this is what I want to end with. This is a new song that came out after this album, but I have found that what I saw in Pete Seeger, different than what other people see, but what I saw was that he was dedicated to the proposition that we do really have all the tools we need to shape ourselves and to shape our world into what we wish them to be. And this song that I have written recently, based on conversations that I had with Pete in the past, is called The Compass. And the compass may possibly tell us how we get from here to there. And I hope you sing along. Songs you're singing, they're coming from your hearts. Yes, they're coming from the same place. The very first song got its start. They weave 100,000 stories, each one of them unique, with the golden thread that binds us. Every soul longs to be free. Every soul longs to be free. They're singing, give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom. Now, you see that? Give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom. Now, everybody had clean water and food enough to eat. If we could satisfy these hungers, of these needs we shall be free. Then we can build the roofs above us, sew the clothes that What does it matter where we find it? From within or from above? We will know the tool is worthy if the needle always points to love. The needle always points to love. Give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom now. Give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom now. Some find the compass in our culture. Some find it in a book. Some find it in our own hearts. If we're brave enough to look. Some find the compass out in nature. The rivers and the trees. Some see it in their neighbors. Hear it in the songs we sing. What does it matter where we find it? Within, without, or from above? We will know the tool is worthy if the needle always points to love. The needle always points to love.
The whimsical world.
The whimsical world.
What a great place for a Unitarian fellowship. When I was talking to Spook about this, he said, I heard a great one the other day. You know, the KKK was going to protest the Unitarians, but they decided they couldn't burn a cross on their lawn, so they burned a question mark.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? The girls have picked them. The girls have picked them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? They've gotten married. They've gotten married, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? And where have all the young men gone? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men? They've gone for soldiers. They've gone for soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers? They've gone to graveyards. They've gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? And where have all the graveyards gone? Where have all the graveyards gone? gone the flowers.
They've gone the flowers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
You guys are fantastic. I love the UU communities because people love to sing.
Yeah.
I'll bet you can sing that first verse all by yourselves. Right?
All right.
Where are all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? The girls that picked them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever?
And even Pete Seeger learned. He learned to change the words in the last few years of his life. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
When will we ever learn? When will we ever
Well, since we're talking about the vote process, and you know, I thank you so much for listening. I gave a shortened version of my presentation, and what I left out a part is about conquering founder's disease. Do you know what founder's disease is? Well, you know, the first time I met Pete, and I actually wear this as a badge of honor. I used to be ashamed of this. I didn't know hardly anything about him at all before I met him in 2003. And he invited me to a festival to perform with him because he liked my songs. And when I got to the festival, I wasn't sure what he looked like because I saw pictures of him from 30 years ago. So I said, "Can you point out Pete Seeger?" He said, "He's standing right there." You know, and here's this guy, maybe one of the most famous people in the world, and he's sitting over, leaning on a car, you know, looking up at the birds, listening to the birds sing. And so I walked over to him, and we had corresponded many, many times already. So I'm sure he would know who I was. And I walked over and I stuck out my hand and I said, "Hi, I'm Pete Seeger." I'm sorry. "Hi, I'm Spook Handy." And I expected him to shake my hand and say, "Hi, I'm Pete Seeger." But he didn't do that. He put his hands in his pockets. And he was about 6'2" at the time. Earlier in his life, he was 6'3". He stooped down 2 inches and looked me in the eyes with these incredibly bright, brilliant blue eyes. And in those eyes, I could see wisdom, determination, fierce determination, and I was scared. It was like he was looking right into my soul, and he said, "Do you know what founder's disease is?" And in one of my rare instances of wisdom, knowing what it was, instead of saying, "Yeah, I know what it is," I said, "Tell me." And he said, "Founder's disease is when the same organization, the same people who founded an organization 30 years ago are still running it today."
That's right.
You know, and then he turned around and walked away, and that was the entirety of our first conversation. And I said, I was as if I was struck by lightning. You know, I don't know why the Holy Spirit set this up that I would have this experience at all to meet Pete Seeger and play with him, but then to get this piece of wisdom. What was that?
Yeah.
What did that mean? And leading up to that point in my life, you know, I was still stuck between, you know, I mentioned to someone before, I had two albums when I was a kid. Peter, Paul, and Mary, and the Beatles. And I was stuck in between which direction I was going in. And then I met Pete, and clarity right there, founder's disease. Getting younger people involved, passing on these traditions to younger generations. Not just the music, but the whole idea of participation, you know? And some of the wonderful things that the younger generations are doing, but they're much more inclusive. I'm still learning to be more inclusive and diversity, which is different than inclusion, but it's still as powerful. Sustainability. I mean, the first time I started having this 19-year-old gal follow me around, became a really great friend, and she's all into sustainability. I'm like, what is that? You know, this is 15 years ago, but and now I understand. It's like it's central to our survival. But one day I was playing for some college students at a fraternity house in Kansas City, Missouri, and I got my muse came down and said, start off with a particular song that I only sang once with Pete and never sang any other time. It's like, okay, I have to sing this song. And I went into the room and I just went, Michael rode the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Michael rode the boat ashore. Hallelujah. Sister, help me trim the sails. Sister, help me trim the sails. Hallelujah. Sister, help me to trim the sails. Hallelujah. Michael rode. Michael rode on the shore. Hallelujah. Beautiful harmony. Michael rode the boat ashore. Hallelujah. So I started my show at this college fraternity with this song. And right at this point in the song, the one kid in the audience yelled, "Stop!" And I figured I had just gotten fired. I mean, this is the 21st century, and I'm playing folk music at a college fraternity. It's not popular anymore, you know, like it used to be. And the guy says, "That's the coolest song I ever heard!"
Oh my gosh!
He said, "Can you give me 5 minutes to get all of my fraternity and brothers and sisters to come down?" And it took 10 minutes, but we got 28 young folks coming around, sitting down on the carpet, because no one had thought to put out chairs, positioning themselves between the cigarette burns and the coffee stains and the duct tape and who knows what else was in that carpet, right? You know?
Yeah.
And so I start playing again, and they start swaying back and forth. They're giggling, poking each other, Facebooking it, but they're not singing. So I said, this song is so simple. I'll sing a line and you just sing back, Hallelujah. The Jordan River is deep and wide. Hallelujah. I'll meet my mother on the other side. Hallelujah. Oh, the Jordan River is chilly and cold. Hallelujah. It chills the body, but not the soul. Hallelujah. Michael Rowe. Kids there, I said, this song is so simple, you can make up your own verses. And I asked, does anybody have a verse they can make up? And I stood there for 3 minutes playing one chord. And finally that young man who piped up the first time said, I got a verse. He said, what was that river you were singing about? I said, that's the Jordan River. Have you ever heard of it? He said, yeah, isn't that somewhere in Utah? He said, you sing that first line about the Jordan River, and I got the second. This is the folk process. The Jordan River is deep and wide. Hallelujah. And he sang this. I'll meet my fraternity brothers on the other side. One day someone sang this. If you get there before I do, hallelujah. Tell my friends that I'm coming to. Hallelujah. Last time, Michael Rowe. Michael Rowe on the shore. Hallelujah. Michael Rowe on the shore. Hallelujah. Here is another amazing thing. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will, let me get my harmonicas.
All right.
Put this down for a second. So I had a residence at Rutgers University, which was pretty cool because I lived right across the street from the college. And one of the assignments that I had was to stand in the hallway of the student center and sing folk songs for 5 days, Monday through Friday, during the lunchtime hour, and expose young folks to folk songs, Monday through Friday, this 1 week. So what I did was, on Monday, I thought really hard about the coolest folk songs I could think of. And I stood there in the hallway singing these folk songs, and everybody walked by, no one paid a lick of attention to me whatsoever. However, I did end with a Pete Seeger song, and the adults stopped by. It stopped doing what they were doing. They stopped and listened and sang along. So I started on Tuesday with Pete Seeger songs, and all the adults stopped by and listened and sang along. And then I went into Woody Guthrie, and the college kids started stopping by and sitting down on the floor, and they just ate it up. And so I finished the song, and I said, well, who can tell me who wrote that song? And nobody knew. And I said, Woody Guthrie! And they were like, who? Now, there's more of a positive side to this than a negative side. How could it be? They didn't like the song because it was some famous person. They didn't know who it was who wrote it. They liked the song because of the song itself. So I asked them, I said, well, why do you like this song? And the word that came out the most was authentic. Authentic. And, you know, what's going on in folk music today is fantastic. And I would really like to get my hands involved in adding a few more elements to it. Young people are learning these old folk instruments. The guitar, yeah, but the mandolin, the mandola, the banjolini, all these instruments, ukulele, all these instruments that, weren't popular when I started out. When I started out, everyone was playing the guitar. And they're learning the old songs, especially the mountain music, especially down here in North Carolina, South Carolina. Really learning the mountain music. And then they're writing new stuff in that tradition. Yeah. The one thing that I would like to, one of the things I like to add to that is, let's get these singable choruses together that people can sing along to. And let's find ways to distill, as folks were saying, find ways to distill down these nuggets of wisdom. We don't make them up, we hear them. And we report them. And put them into the songs. This song here is, it's so rich. It's so simple. Incredibly simple. But, I would say that I've learned 80% of what I know about history because of folk music. It's not only in the songs, but things that are in the songs make me look up other stuff. And Woody Guthrie, boy, it's been a long time since I've done a show. Remembering the songs. Very autobiographical. I'm rambling round your cities, rambling round your towns. I never see a face I know when I go rambling round. What? When I go rambling round. My sweetheart and her parents I left back in my old hometown. I'm out to do the best I can as I go rambling round, as I go rambling round. The peach trees, they're all loaded, their limbs bend to the ground. I pick them all day for $1 as I go rambling round, as I go rambling round. Sometimes the fruit gets rotten, it falls down on the ground. There's a hungry mouth for every peach as I go rambling round, as I go rambling I could settle down, but I can't save a penny as I go rambling round, as I go rambling round. My mother prayed that I would be a man of some renown, but I am just a refugee as I go rambling round. So in 2010, so you know, Pete Seeger would lead on the left side of the political aisle, so would Woody Guthrie, so would I. But in 2010, I was traveling around the country, and the number of people, 2010 was the time that the Tea Party got a lot of people elected. And I would do all these tours annually, and one of them in the autumn, I end up at home the day before Election Day. So the last 4 shows I did were in deep red conservative places, and after every show I was invited to play at the Tea Party rallies. Now, I'm not sure if I would have done it. I might have done it, but I didn't have time, so I didn't. But I was just fascinated. I was fascinated. These people, like these people, you know, people who think politically different than me, find value in the folk songs because they touch on the commonality of all of us. So I went to back to Beacon, New York, and told Pete. We were at the Beacon Sloop Club, one of those first Friday meetings, and he was so excited. He went running across the room, Toshi, Toshi, you know, his wife, Toshi, the Tea Party likes my music. He was so excited because here are people who he disagrees with, but they're finding some kind of common ground. And so Pete and I talked about, you know, what are the things that we all have in common? And we were listing all these things, and it even came down to, we all have 2 eyes, most of us. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 ears. And it was shortly after that I was playing up in Beacon and doing a solo set, and Pete walked up to me and he said, Spook, you know, there's a reason that God gave you 2 ears and only 1 mouth. And walked away again, you know, left me to figure out what that meant. But it turned into this song. It's called Do It in the Name of Love. Between between those ears. She's got two eyes. She sees the world from different sides and uses her heart when it's time to decide how to do it in the name of love. Help me sing the chorus. Do it in the name of love. You can hear the world around her sing. Do it in the name of love. She's got no doubt, it's a fact. When she points one finger, three point right back. Whatever she puts into the world, that goes back. And so she'll do it in the name of love. Do it in the name of love. You can hear the world around her sing. Do it in the name of love. She knows there's times for I, me, my. She knows there's times to put the ego aside. Work to bring forth what the whole room decides, if it's decided in the name of love. Do it in the name of love. You can hear the world around her sing.